First of all, welcome to our January 2015 Convocation General Assembly. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope our gathering this morning finds all of us in good health and spirits for the start of this new year. We're all excited to be back, and I really appreciate your time this morning. I know how busy we are. I know what this period of time is right before students start to return, so thank you so much for your time. I wanted to begin this morning with a few important introductions. First of all, we have some of our board members here, and I'd like to acknowledge the fact that they take the time to get up and come over and spend a little time with us this morning. So we've got our board president, Lori Cardoza. And we have board member Greg Sherman. And board member Ken Muniz. Thank you guys for being here. I also want to offer a special welcome because you may or may not recall, but during the post show cause period when we were in our accreditation response mode, we activated College of the Sequoias Community Advisory Committee. And it was a really important element of that accreditation response. But the really nice thing is they met every 2 weeks right alongside us for that whole 12 or 18-month period. Since then, they've gotten so interested in COS and so connected to us through that process that they continue to now serve in an ongoing capacity and meet quarterly throughout the year to continue to be an advisory committee to us from our community. And we have several members out here this morning from that group, so I'd just like to welcome them this morning too and acknowledge their coming. So thank you for being here. Okay, a real quick overview. A little different than past convocations recently. We're going to occupy a couple hours of our time this morning. That's kind of the standard amount of time that we're committed to be able to get together with you as administration and staff. But we're going to break it up into a couple parts. So we're going to spend the first hour here together, and then at that midpoint, I'll give some instructions about where we disperse to from them. If you did get time to open the attachment with the reminder letter, you saw in that email that administrative services will be reconvening in one location and student services in another for the second hour, and then faculty and academic services will remain here. But I'll remind you of that. I just wanted to give you a heads up that there's going to be a little transition right in the middle. So we do have a fabulous guest presenter here today for us to share on the academic side, connecting our student learning outcomes to program outcomes, which I think is a perfect time for us because that's a lot of what we're working on together, and we're really excited about having some special expertise to help us with that. So let me get on with just the quick mid-year update, if you will. And I'm going to start with just acknowledging and continuing to thank all of you for the work we've done to transition to COS 2.0. We had the privilege and responsibility yesterday, as a matter of fact, Dr. Lacerna, Dr. Trimble, Board President Lori Cardoza, and myself, to drive up to Sacramento and make what we now believe is our final appearance before the ACCJC. And it was to be there to speak personally to the follow-up report that we just submitted and to give them they gave us 5 minutes of fame to encapsulate the last 2 years. And we were able to succinctly share with them how the follow-up report was completed in relation to our original show cause response report. And it really was, although the day was long and they told us, you're going to arrive at 1:30, and here's how the ACCJC schedules. You can go on anytime between 1:30 and 5. So we were hoping, because we had to drive a long way back, that they would think about where they schedule you based on location. No. And then I shouldn't have said that. The colleges or district that had to go before us, it was about, over an hour of time for their 5 minutes of fame. So we liked our 5 minutes of fame better. Because when we got in, and it was close to 4 o'clock, 3:30 or 4 o'clock, we had our 5 minutes, and they were very complimentary. I think the chairman of the ACCJC's comment kind of summed it all up. We got to give our statement. He asked all the way around the commission, do you have any questions of College of the Sequoias? They had no questions. Lots of smiles, lots of nodding heads. And then the chairman of the commission looked at us and said, I think the fact that we have no questions tells you of how impressed we are with how College of the Sequoias has responded, and then they thanked us. So thank you for all of that. And here on the home front, I think some of the evidence that we should all be paying attention to, because I said this, the last little bit I shared with them is if you want to know how COS 2.0 is working, I said you need to take a look at what it's producing for us. You know, the 1,840 degrees and certificates that we issued last year, the 96 new police officers that we certified, the 100 new nurses that we pinned, the 25 firefighters, the 26 physical therapy assistants, the restoration of summer school, the hiring back of 16 faculty over the last 2 cycles. We wowed them pretty good. And what we were trying to share with them is the way that we feel now about the new systems is reflected in the actual day-to-day operations. The whole idea that accreditation is no longer a one-time event. It's kind of our institutional way of life. We just want to be good at what we do. So we talked to them a little bit about how academic senate meetings now, for example, can run for an hour. And sometimes even less. I think so far we've set the record at about 40 minutes, Thea. And it's not because anything's not being given due diligence or time. It's that there's a nice system in place where things overlap. Senators who sit on academic senate also sit in district governance senate. They hear the same presentations from the budget committee on district budget. And the budget committee reps in senate are also hearing the same information. So when you tie those circles together and they all interlock, the meetings become more efficient. So I think we built in enough redundancy in the system to be really efficient, but not enough to bog down. And so we were really happy about that. And I think that's the way that we feel confident in being able to sustain the progress that we're continuing to make. Okay, anybody seen this before? All right. So let me tell you, we share this because we want to continually remind ourselves not only what we did, but where we are. Because this is our integrated planning cycle. And as we have implemented the second half of this warning report and closing out last year, we've come up on a couple of those important deadlines we set back in 2013. And one of them was that we would have a process to review, revise, and reaffirm our mission statement. And that's been done. A task force did great work, sent out surveys, got 100 respondents back, brought it through the process so that Academic Senate got to see the responses, District Governance Senate got to see the responses, a reaffirmation of our district's mission statement with a few minor adjustments from that process goes to our board for a first view at our meeting this coming Monday. So that work is ongoing and on its way. Similarly, you're familiar with the fact that we've been working now on the master plan. When we were getting accredited, we said we've got to have a timeline and a process to renew our 10-year master plan. And that's all been done. That process was comprehensive over the course of the first semester. The 10-year master plan that will guide us from 2015 to 2025 goes to the board for an action item and first reading on Monday. Built into there are those 4 major district goals that we've all had a part in creating, and they're going to drive for us what happens next. And in our timeline and the planning that we did, we said that a 10-year plan is a fabulous 30,000-foot view, but you got to have some smaller intervals where you can actually pay attention to what you're doing on a regular basis. That's where our strategic plan comes in. And in our timelines, we said this semester, spring of 2015, we would begin the process to develop our next 3-year plan, which is going to be the first 3 years of that 10-year cycle. And in that plan, we'll develop our specific district objectives. And those will be the things that we commit to measuring in accordance with the new requirements we have for the Student Success Act. And then we're all familiar now with the new process for program review. It's annual. It happens at unit level. It's where we talk about our student learning outcomes. If it's a non-instructional area where we talk about our service area outcomes, and then all the planned actions we have to align our work with those district objectives. This process has been in place now. Again, it went through review and improvement. It's about to begin again, and that happens through our resource allocation manual and our budget committee. We try to continually conduct our dialogue days, district forums, district summits, department meetings as a way to continually talk about outcomes and assessments. So we learned some things in the accreditation response period that we built in as good best practices for how we keep the institution connected and communicating to each other. And then as the year comes to an end, every year our cycle requires that we gather up the data, we analyze it, we prepare it, and we share it with the board, staff, and community in an annual report on our master plan. And that's now going to be done by measuring those 3-year intervals of our strategic plan. So I think this is the system that's been working for us, and we're going to continually try to improve it. But you can see where we are right now as we're over there as we begin the new 3-year strategic plan for 2015 to 2018. Okay, we've talked a lot about the Student Success Act, and it really is one of the drivers. It was legislation passed in 2012. You'll remember there was a Student Success Task Force. And probably the seminal piece that came out of that was this statewide Student Success Scorecard. We've talked about it a little bit here before. It's data that the Chancellor's Office pulls from reports and other data that we submit, and they gather it up based on the recommendations of the task force, that Success Task Force, and they report out on every community college in the system. So it's kind of our new form of statewide accountability. And you might remember that it looks like this. This is what it looks like if you go to the website and pull it up at the Chancellor's Office. And this is just the first page, and normally what it shows you is the demographics of our area, and then those gray boxes across the upper line there are the specific areas that when the task force did their statewide work, they found that those were some of the most frequent correlates with ongoing student success. So those are the measure points that we're trying to tie to. The only comment I want to make about the reference to the demographics is this. When we've been talking now with the others who are being accredited and community college neighbors and all of our colleagues, I think we recognize that the Central Valley as a region proposes a unique set of challenges regarding our student demographic and our demographics in general. Compared to the urban settings like the Bay Area and Southern California, as a region, we're educationally and economically underdeveloped, primarily because our centerpiece is agriculture, and that limits the other kinds of economic development that can take place. It also brings us a regular, steady population of workers, employees, employers centered around agriculture. So as we think about that, we know that we're going to constantly have students who may be living below the poverty level. We're going to have students whose second language will be something other than English. And we also know, or their second language will be English, their primary language something other than English. So we know we've got this challenging demographic. And it's a pretty easy place to slip into as we face the challenges in educating our students to say that we work really hard, but you have to understand our students are different. They bring a lot of problems. You know, they need money, they need transportation, they have to leave early, they have to work, their parents of their children, etc. And all of that's true. All of that is true. I guess what I'm going to encourage us to do is also understand that that can't be the reason why we don't work hard at trying to find the best possible ways to increase the productivity of those student groups. It's a scary, what I call a slippery slope, when we descend into a conversation and clinically dissect everything that's wrong with our population, and we spend most of our time talking about that and not necessarily talking about what can we do to make a difference with the greatest number of those students that we can. Because this is the area where we work. If we were cancer researchers, we wouldn't want to have given up on trying to find a cure in 1960. Or else we'd still be doing what we did in 1960 to prevent cancer. So we're a little bit like that, because not that our customers are a disease, but they've got those variables, right, that are outside our control. So we're constantly being scientific about how we approach. And I think this college in particular has the heart to do that. Remember, I've told you a lot of times that one of the things that makes us all feel really good when you talk to our students at COS, no matter what, in the middle of accreditation or not accreditation, a current student or a past student, the overwhelming majority of those responses talk about the favorable relationship they had with the adults that were here, that their faculty cared about them, that they got a good education. I think that's the heart that's going to drive us past the demographics. Okay, That is what it is. So what do these other things mean? Here's how the Chancellor's Office has defined it. Persistence is very specific. How many students enroll consecutively fall to fall? That ongoing enrollment, that constant connection, that's one of those success indicators. The next one, 30 units. The data show that if they complete 30 units, exponentially they do better fulfilling the rest of their plan. Completion is simply that. Can we get them to that degree or certificate? Remedial is a little different. I'm sorry guys, too many clips. Remedial is a little different. When we think remedial, we think, is that how many students enroll in our prerequisite courses? It's not. It's how many of them pass the college level course after they succeeded in that remedial class. That's a tough one. That's a harder one to achieve. And then finally, in career tech ed, how many of them are completing the certificates? They're coming here for a purpose. How well are we doing with completion? So those are defined for us. We don't get to change those, but that's kind of how the statistics are going to be shown. They're going to be portrayed each year on the scorecard for us, along with the other 112 community colleges. So this student success scorecard for us, remember, drives the student success support plan. That's a requirement from the state. And the student equity plan. That's the second requirement from the state. We shared these with you in the fall. These are requirements that are coming to us with additional funding, categorical funding, restricted money for the purpose of improving in these areas. So yeah, we're getting some new money, and that's going to be good news. And we might even hear in the governor's budget today or tomorrow that there's a good news horizon for community college budgets for next year. The question is, how is the funding going to come? And in the last couple of years, it's come in these areas to try to spend money specifically at achieving these things. So we feel like it's pretty logical to expect then that as we start our next 3-year strategic plan, we're not going to open the box unlimited and say, hey, what all is out there, and let's figure out everything new we might want to do. Rather, we're going to go right to what we've already prepared, which are our student success plan and the student equity plan, and figure out how to build our objectives as an institution to fulfill those two plans. Because that's how our funding comes. So if you're thinking, well, that was kind of tricky of the state. They gave us some restricted money that was going to force us to set our goals in order to align with it. Yeah, that's exactly how it's working now. All right. So the student success plan, just a couple of quick highlights. I know you maybe have seen bits and pieces of it. Some of you have worked with it extensively. But the idea, remember, is to increase completion, and that's degrees and certificates. And ultimately, I don't know how many of you have ever read Jim Collins' research, and it started with Built to Last and then Good to Great, and that study about what good organizations do. One of the elements he talks about in there is a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. Put something out there that tries to align the whole company and all the resources toward that goal. The analogy he uses is when President Kennedy said, we're going to land on the moon by the end of the decade. He tried to mobilize the whole country to point in that direction. Well, if we had a big, hairy, audacious goal, it would probably be that. Because if we do that at a greater rate, regardless of what all the other variables are, we're going to be improving a lot of other things along the way. So that's one of the elements of our student success plan. The second is that we've got to talk about how the stuff's being reported. You know, I showed you that very interesting student success scorecard right now, but at a statewide level, they're drawing gross data from other reports we submit. And then they're just very simply, to apply it to 112 colleges, they're figuring out how to show percentages on those indicators. So let's say, and they work with 6-year cohorts. So let's say the cohort that was here, that started here 6 years ago, is the one that will be measured now. And what they're going to do is they're going to take our total population. It was probably 13,000 students back then. And then they're going to show us what percentage of that total 13,000 students completed a degree or certificate, and it's going to come out to be a small number for us. It's going to be 27% or something like that. And unfortunately, that's what gets printed in the newspaper. Here's the problem, is that of that 13,000 students, there was probably only about 3,000 who came with the specific intent to get that degree or transfer. And if you took the same number who passed and matched it up against those who said, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm going to do, it's 75%. So we have to figure out how to disaggregate our own data and figured a local reporting system that shows alongside the state system, when you take the state numbers and you break them down for smaller pieces, here's what we really look like inside the curtains at COS. And the way that we're going to try to do that is a software tracking system. It's a degree audit system called DegreeWorks. Many of you have colleagues in other institutions that use this, and you have other examples of software that works like this. But it's a way to begin to pull information off of student SEPs, pull information off of whether or not they complete classes, determine whether they're a transfer eligible student or a pre-transfer eligible student, and get them into the categories so that we can show more accurate data and account for the successes that we're achieving. We have to continue creative approaches to counseling. We have those built into the success plan. Class scheduling based on student demand. This is one of those, like maybe many that are up there, where as we're clicking off the bullets, you're going, oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, we do that. We may say class scheduling based on student demand. Yeah, we do that. But we're going to have to dig a little deeper. What the successful colleges are doing that we see in the research is they're actually looking at continuum patterns, and they're looking not only within a department, what's the right sequence of English classes, and should we offer them at different times so students can get them. But we have to do it across departments. If students need general ed requirements, are they in conflict with some things that we've set up at the same time that's preventing them from getting their general ed at the times that the greatest demand is? So it is really organizing the work of the college around student demand, and that's going to, I'm just being honest, that's probably going to bump up against some of our comfort zones. Because the first thing we want to do when we're setting up the schedule is roll over last year's and then go in as a division and say, here's where I want to teach, or here's the office hours we want to have open. And we're going to probably have to look at what the student demand is there, because the more aligned that can be, we can expedite success. We can expedite matriculation. And then we have to grow our enrollment. The master plan says we're going to grow in accordance with the population growth in our region. The population growth in our region is going to grow. I guess this has always been a goal, and it always is, because FTES transfers into funding. But what I would say is we have an opportunity now to grow our enrollment more thoughtfully. And by that I mean, what I've seen just in the short time that I've been here, and then looking back on what we did in those boom and bust years, is we would try hard to build up enrollment, and then we would have to reduce it. And we would try hard to build it up, and then we would have to reduce it. Or we would build up enrollment, and then the economy would tank. And when the economy tanks, that has an effect on us. Actually, when the economy goes down, we get a little bit more in enrollment. Less people are in work, more of them are getting retrained for new jobs. So there's a lot of variables outside. State legislation affects our enrollment. For all of those 20 to 85-year-olds, there's economic and social variables that affect how they ebb and flow in and out of our enrollment. There's one steady source of enrollment that we can get real data on and we can track, and that's graduating high school seniors. And we know that we're a feeder program for all of our high schools in our area. We can look at their projected enrollment numbers and know what's coming, and we can be specifically trying to establish a stronger base. So no matter what's happening with all these variables in the economy and who's going in and out, if we can get more of our high school seniors to select COS as their first choice educational path, maybe instead of their default educational path, we're building a stronger base just as a system. So I figured, having had 20 years in the K-12 system, if we don't do this a little bit better with the opportunity that I have to be here and contribute to this team, then this board right here should not renew my contract. Because I think that's one of the things that we should be able to do better. So if that's our bread and butter, if incoming seniors from high school is where we want to really try to build stronger relationships, here's some of the components we have in place and want to put in place. First, we do this now. We have annual meetings with all the high school counselors. It's a great start. All by itself, though, it won't help us get as far as we need to get. Secondly, we've implemented annual reports to all the high school boards. So I go out once a year and I take a little PowerPoint and I show them, here's the students from Tulare Joint Union High School District that are now enrolled at COS. We can track their students. And then I give them the demographics for their students. Here's what most of them are selecting as their majors. Here's where most of them land on placement exams. Are they college level ready in English? Are they college level ready in math? Here's their pass rates and here's their percentages. So we're building a sense of common understanding. I definitely do not go out to blame them. I don't go out and say, geez, if you guys just did a better job, we really have it together. I go out to share with them that we understand they pick up students coming in with real deficits as well. And so we're all in this system, we're all trying to correct that deficit as quickly as we can. And so I talk to them about the resources that we're going to bring to bear to help those students who are below college level when we get them. But we need their students to feel like they can come to us. And so that's a regular annual connection. The next piece that we want to talk about, and I'm going to work on this spring, is actually meeting directly with the high school principals. In a high school system, the principal is like the dean is in a community college. They're the ones directly connected to the faculty. They're the ones that shepherd that division, in this case, that school. And so you can talk to the superintendents out there. It doesn't always translate down to the principals. So we're going to have direct contact with the principals now and talk about College of the Sequoias. The other thing I want to do is I want to get to the parents. And there's 3 places in K-12 where you get big auditoriums full of parents. The biggest one is kindergarten registration. Everybody comes to kindergarten registration. The next biggest one is when students are going from 6th grade to 7th grade and they're making that transition to middle school. We call that kindergarten 2. That's second evolution of kindergarten. But it's a great place if you're there as a College of the Sequoias representative to have 3 minutes on that agenda to talk to the parents of those 7th grade kids about preparation for college and hand them materials that show that College of the Sequoias is the most cost-effective and most efficient model for them to do their first 2 years of college and then transfer to any university they want, or to get trained for whatever job they might like. And then the last place in the K-12 continuum where you get a pretty good chunk of parents is when they're transitioning into high school. So we want to put ourselves in front of the parents now at a couple places where we haven't done before. Because in my days as a K-12, I often thought, man, if COS or if colleges wanted to really make an impact, they would come to these 2 meetings. So we're going to start to target those. The other thing you've heard about is our pathway to college with the feeder high schools. Dr. Lacerna, Dr. Robinson, our division chair in English, Dave Robinson, a number of faculty have just been working really hard to try to make this partnership work. And we're following the data. What our data shows us, when I go through those presentations to the high school board, is that a high percentage of our seniors from high school come to us not college ready, for example, in English. So when I show that percentage to them, what I want to tell them is we've got some ideas for how to go at this. And it's maybe what we're trying to do now is take our prerequisite courses, in this case English, and offer that English 251 to students in their senior year at high school, so that they're clearing that off the deck early. The pilot that we did was out in Corcoran 2 years ago, and we offered 24 students English 251 in the first semester, and then 22 of those students passed. The second semester we offered English 1. So when those students rode the bus over to Tulare to register for COS the next year, they had their English 1 done. So it cleared those prerequisites and it got them further into the loop. And we took care of the remediation. So this year we expanded that to a few more high schools. Next year we'll be in 9. So I know you've heard a little bit about that, and I wanted you to understand what the thinking was behind that, because that's one way that we can partner with the high schools to help deal with the remediation. The transfer model curriculum and the transfer admission guarantees are a couple of our best kept secrets. That's that stuff we want to share with those parents in the orientation. That, did you know you can get a transfer admission guarantee to these UCs if you come to COS and maintain a GPA and complete this sequence of coursework? I can tell you as a former K-12, our high schools and parents don't know that. They don't know it as well as we would like them to. I think we need to advertise the sample cost analysis, especially now. We were talking on the ride home, the ladies and I, about what do you think is going to happen with the legislature and the UC? Because UC keeps jacking up the rates, the fees, the tuition. And I kind of smugly said, you know, if they want to keep bumping up UC tuition, that's okay with me. Because that means those students are going to be hard pressed to afford that. They're going to have to look for alternatives and options. And we want to be there to fill that gap. It's really not okay with me, but you get the point. And then finally, just a better job of marketing and celebrating all of the COS successes. So I wanted to give you a peek at the game plan to go after that bread and butter enrollment. Real quick, the student equity plan. And remember, equity has a new definition now. We have a student equity committee, and they've been fabulous at working with us. And Lisa Crumpler has provided great input, but she helped us understand that we need to redefine equity now because the state has defined equity. And it's not equal access anymore. It's not underrepresented groups like minorities or disabled students. It's not equity in that sense. It's equity in the sense of achievement. So when we measure our students and we find that we have certain subgroups, an ethnic subgroup, an age subgroup, a gender subgroup, that's underperforming in any one of those areas on the scorecard, lower completion rates, lower retention rates, there's an inequitable level of achievement. We have to close that gap. So with that as the new definition of equity, here's what we have in the equity plan. The degree works, which is the better data, track them, know who they are, target services to them. A new director of student success, a position that's funded with these categorical resources to target and oversee the implementation and accountability for these services. New support and positions for student success. There's got to be a way to supplement and strengthen what we're doing with the contact with these student subgroups. It's not fair that our counselors have that burden all on their own. There's got to be, that way we can really refine the counseling role to that planning and that verification for where you're going next and what you're going to do next, as opposed to trying to run interference for all of the little stumbling blocks that get in the way of the student's matriculation. Targeting those case-loaded services for the subgroups. Scaling up best practices. We've had a great first-year experience model here at COS. We've taken the data that shows us what works well in first-year experience, and we're using some of these resources to multiply those opportunities to a larger student audience. And then finally, consolidating those services and resources and accessibility so that we may have a student success center where a lot of things are available rather than having to have students go off based on their individual demographic to different offices. Trying to bring it together and leverage the effectiveness of those resources. So we reaffirm the mission. We've got the master plan under our belt. We'll be working on this 3-year strategic plan now, and it's got to be consistent with student success and student equity, and it's got to be driven by student demand. All makes pretty good sense. Okay, it wouldn't be New Year's without a New Year's resolution. Woohoo! So, I don't know how you all are with your New Year's resolutions, and I don't know if you're on the same group email list that I am, but I'm wondering what's up that I get random emails after New Year's about weight loss. I get fit. So I think Brent put me on some lists. But I went through and I just started looking at if you Google New Year's resolutions and you look for the funniest ones, I found this one that I thought, for me anyway, hit pretty close to home, because I don't know about all of you, but I tend to renew my New Year's resolutions more regularly than achieve them. And I thought this was a pretty good way of describing exactly how my New Year's resolution looks from time to time. So if you look up there, in blue, that was 2010. And the thing you got to realize is this is that ongoing list, okay? So follow the colors with me for a minute, but if we look at number 1, in blue it says lose weight. And then the next year when we adjust the color, it says, well, lose more weight. And then the 3rd year after that, it goes, well, lose more weight again. And we keep going on that one. Number 2, go for a morning walk. Well, I didn't make the morning walks. Next year, try to go for a morning walk. After that, how about go for an evening walk? Just keep adjusting it. Number 3, get fit. I like this one. After that, no, get fitter. And then how about I just get fit next year? All right, number 4, give up sweets. After that, I'll give up snackers and eat less sweets. Number 5, drive slow. After that, drive slow and safely. Then finally, just don't drive. Number 6, we all like this one. Be nice to my colleague. The next year, be nicer to my colleague. After that, try to be nicer to my colleague. Now, try to be nicer to my ex-colleague. It hasn't been working. And the last one, join music classes. Oh, okay. Try to join music classes. The year after that, call music teacher at home. And then finally, how about I just listen to music? I think that's good. So if we think about what we have to look forward to this new year, I'll summarize for you very quickly. COS's New Year's resolution, if we want to call it that. We're going to create that clear, measurable strategic plan. We're going to align those objectives with our requirements in success and equity. We want to prioritize the work of the district around the needs of students. The good news is, it looks like, because this year we're being required to restore the FON, our full-time obligation number, all the way back to the pre-recession level when it was frozen. We're going to be able to, as of right now, until we get the governor's budget for next year, hire 5 to 7 new FTE again. And the ranking process for that has gone through instructional council on the academic side. It's gone through the general student services council on the non-academic side. Those priorities have been set, and hopefully before the end of the day today, I'll have the email out that shows you the content areas that we're going to be targeting for our new hire. And then we're pursuing the official center status and expanded services for both Hanford and Tulare. That's an ongoing goal for us. We've got our center status application submitted to the Board of Governors, and we'll be up there in March to represent that. Hopefully be coming back with good news that Hanford will achieve official center status. Tulare already has official center status. And then we've got, in all the different corners of the district, some renewal going on, refresh and realign. You're going to hear news today, perhaps, if I get time to get the email out, or the first part of next week. Offices like our Disability Resource Center, our Veterans Center, our BICS, which is Building, Industry, and Community Services, Business, Industry, and Community Services, that came from, I was sure that would have come from Luann, but it was Christian. Anyway, they're all going to have, everybody's been going through the same process, realigning what they're doing, what their internal office operations are, their service area outcomes, and they're going to be having new names, new titles that are more clear, more precise, more understandable, and better aligned. So, that brings us to kind of our midway point now, and I want to share with you what we plan to do next. We're going to have a little transition period, and these are always a little tricky, and here's why. Because we've got to disperse into a couple of different areas for the second half of our convocation presentation this morning, but some of us are going to stay here. And there's always a question in the back of our minds as we take that moment to transition, if when we return, anybody's going to be here. So I've assured our guest presenter, Dr. Marshall, who is a faculty member from Cal State San Bernardino, that College of the Sequoias is an incredibly professional place, and he's going to be speaking to a full complement of academic service and faculty when we get back. But here's how this looks. Administrative services are going to reconvene when we break here in Hospital Rock 134. Student services staff are going to reconvene in Ponderosa 350. Academic services and all faculty will remain in the theater. It's a good time to stand up for a minute, take a stretch break, but we really do want everybody to report to their locations. We have one more hour together, and then our time will be freed up for the rest of the day. I'm going to give you a midway reminder if you're a full-time faculty member. Academic Senate today is taking the vote on the renewal of the Constitution, and you've been given those ballots. If you haven't turned those back in and you're still holding your ballot, you can turn that in while you're taking your stretch break, or make sure that you turn that in as soon as we finish. So if we can do the transition when we reconvene, I'm going to give us just about 5 minutes to disperse and then reassemble. I'm going to formally introduce Dr. Marshall. Okay, so thank you all for your time this morning, and we're just starting outside.